Hello and welcome to A View for You, a twice monthly journal about people and events of interest in the San Francisco Bay Area. My name is Peter Camarda. I'll be your host tonight. We're broadcasting to you live on public access television, Comcast Channel 76, AT&T Channel 99, and Astound Channel 30. Tonight my guest is Paul Hufstedler, who has recently completed a biography about his life growing up in the Midwest. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you, Peter. A delight to be here.
And I just wanted to start by asking you a couple of questions about the book, and then maybe later on we'll have time to take some questions if anybody calls in. You are now in your 50s, I guess?
I'm 62 and a half, my friend.
62 and a
half. Time
half.
marches on.
So tell me then, Paul, what made you decide to write this book at this time in your life?
I don't think it was ever a conscious decision to create a book until late in the game. I've been writing all of my life, but it wasn't until a few years ago when I took a really good course from a private teacher who gave workshops in her home, how to get beyond the usual stumbling blocks to storytelling. And that was when I began to really decide that I could write short stories at least. And if I kept focused on the smaller, maybe the bigger would take care of itself. And sure enough, after a while I had a collection of stories. It's kind of ironic that I've spent 31 of my 62 years in San Francisco, but all that I feel compelled to write about is the first 31 years back in the Midwest where I came from.
So this book is really in many senses then about your roots.
It is indeed, and about the people who helped me get going in life. It's also ironic that I couldn't wait to leave the Midwest, and now
so many people.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. I had so many wonderful, larger-than-life characters populating my life. All of them generous enough to give me a life lesson or a helping hand along the way. It's been a great way to reminisce about my life with an anthology of stories.
Let's just take a look now at the book cover itself, show the audience. This is a very interesting title. You have...
It goes on forever, doesn't it?
Yeah, so how did you come up with that title? Tell us a little
Never
about
felt better, looked worse, nor had less is something that my father would say if you made the mistake of asking him, "How are you doing today, Huff?" Never felt better, looked worse, nor had less. It always rolled off his tongue, and he always thought it was funny every time he said it. So it's about growing up off-center in the Middle West in the middle of the last century. And a lot of it is exploring the roots of my parents, who were very rural. I grew up a suburban kid, and I was the youngest of three boys, which made me kind of an outsider in a number of different ways. I was left-handed, and that was probably as much of an outsider issue as growing up trying to figure out whether or not I was gay.
Me too. Being left-handed is correlated, I think.
We should do a program on that, Peter.
Anyway, please continue with your explanation.
Well, some of the people who have read this book by now have been very generous and have said this is like a Prairie Home Companion meets Tales of the City. But I think that's a little bit over the top. I am flattered, but really, everyone has a specific locale to their story. But there are certain universals, such as trying to figure out who you are in life and what you stand for and who are your role models. It's not always easy if your parents were much older, as mine were. Mom was 40 when I was born, and I was the youngest by far. My oldest brother was 13 years older than I, so I was the tag-along. And somewhere along the way, I was thinking, these people are so colossally funny. Somebody's got to get this down. somebody's got to make notes. So I became the person who, at least over the years, made mental notes.
And in terms of where you grew up, it was Kansas City that you grew up in?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Kansas City. Shawnee, Kansas is about 15 miles southwest of Kansas City. And it was a nice small town to grow up in, but with access to a larger town nearby.
You talk about a lot of different sort of adolescent experiences in the book, drinking, smoking.
Oh, there's plenty of that.
Lots of high school stuff. What does it really mean to you to be a Midwesterner? I found the flavor of this book kind of interesting. But of course, you're approaching it personally, sort of what your life was like. But looking back now and looking at what you wrote, what is it about your life that makes it Midwestern?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. I can tell you that for the first few years that I lived in California, I refrained from referring to myself as a Californian. I just did not buy into everything about this new place. There were a lot of people my age who were flocking here sometime after the Haight-Ashbury invasion, and everybody had their own reasons, but I still was clinging to a certain set of values and perhaps a groundedness that I saw in people back there, a certain practicality as well as a deep friendliness that was a little scarce in my first years here. Now I have to admit I'm a San Franciscan at least.
Well, you've talked a lot in the book about how your childhood affected you, and so I guess there's a sense that that was formative in a way that almost nothing afterwards was, or do you think now there's sort of an even balance, 50-50, when you look at who you are today?
When I was a young person, I saw a lot of people who wanted to get the heck out of Dodge and move west, and many of them came back burnt out and broke, and they just couldn't thrive in with all of the kid in the candy store things at their disposal, and I realized that if I was going to fulfill a lifelong dream about moving here, I was 16 years old when I first came out here. I didn't even know why I wanted to live here, but I knew that I did. It was like a calling. But I knew that if I was going to make it stick, I was going to have to remain true to a few things that I learned early in life. And as I say, there were a lot of people around who could help me learn some important life lessons that I couldn't lose my moorings altogether. Came very close a number of times.
So do you think then that being a gay man in the Midwest would have been a very different experience? Do you think you would have turned out very differently if you had stayed there?
I'm certain of it. Yeah, I'm certain of it. There is something in the soil and water here that promotes growth and in improbable ways, and I'm very, very grateful for what I've found here. I didn't know I was looking for it when I first moved here.
Well, I know you have selected a couple of passages to read, and I thought that might be nice for people to hear a little bit of the flavor of what your life was like back then and who you used to be. So would you like to read us a selection now?
Yes. This is, my family had a couple of close encounters with Mr. Showmanship, Liberace, and this is about an evening one night when my brother Tom, who's 4 years older than I, took my mother, Pearl, who was 63 at the time, to a Las Vegas show starring Liberace.
Wow.
And they got a little tipsy and made a little scene.